You are listening to Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour, a podcast released on the first 3 Wednesdays of the month. Family crisis, relationship crisis, addiction crisis, no two crisis situations are the same. They vary by family, individual, and relationship. They can encompass complex family dynamics, emotional distress, anger issues, and entitlements, and often involve substance abuse. This podcast addresses these issues and others surrounding the addiction epidemic currently plaguing this country and the world. There is hope and help.
Are you stuck, scared, or unsure of what to do next? If a situation with a loved one, spouse, or even a child has started to spiral, possibly becoming dangerous or threatening, it's time to seek help. My name is Scott H. Silverman. I help families navigate crisis situations. I'm the person you turn to in order to get you and your loved ones unstuck.
Welcome back to the show. This is Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour. I'm Michael Glenn Moore. Scott, you notice anything different about me?
Well, you normally wear a hat, and it looks like you've completely taken every piece of your facial hair off of your face. So you look like you're just graduating high school, Michael.
I'm nude now. So yeah, I've decided to cut it off. I've had it for years and I just got tired of dealing with the beard and the hair on the top of my head. I was, having a bald spot. So I went ahead and just shaved all of it. So I feel liberated.
Yeah, you look great. What motivated you?
Going to the hospital with my mother, and I spent all day up there with the mask on, and the beard just drove me crazy. I'd only before then had spent little short amounts of time with the mask on, so it didn't really bother me. But being up there all day long with the mask on and the beard and the mustache and the face mask, it was just horrible. So I decided that night when I got home, I was going to shave, and that's what I did. So here I am.
You look great, brother. You really look good.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead and why don't you give us your phone number? We haven't done it in a while, I don't think.
Okay, I'll do that. Anyway, you're all listening to Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour with Michael Glenn Moore, our co-host. And I want to give you my phone number, 619-993-2738. I give it out whenever I can when I'm talking to the public. And I hope you'll give us a call and let us know if there's a way that we can help you and your family potentially move someone that you have in crisis to another level, access some help. And it doesn't matter where you call in the country or even the world. If I can't help you, I'll find a way to get you help, because every community has their resources, and sometimes just asking certain questions, fighting hard for your loved one, and advocating, meaning that you don't have to sit in your chair and worry anymore. There are people out there that really want to help, and there are solutions, and there's always help, and there's always hope. But before we get going, a quick example of how that doesn't work sometimes. I got a text the other day from somebody through a medium that we use to help attract clients. And they sent a text. I responded and said, "How can I help?" And she said, "Who are you and what do you want?" And I said, "Well, I'm responding to your text. Is there something going on?" The portal they come through is usually somebody who's in crisis. So I said, I'm here to help, and that's what I want to do. And then she says, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "I want to help save lives. What would you like to do?" She said, "Well, that's none of my business. Please stop texting me." I said, "Okay, I get it. When you're ready, give us a call back." So, and that was unusual. I don't normally see that. It was not your referral, though, Terry. It was somebody else. So your referral, and I talked the other day, and it was great. Appreciate that.
No, so thank you for helping them.
Yeah, today we're talking to somebody who, I know her so well, but yet she hasn't taken me to lunch yet. There's clearly a sign about what that may mean. I know she works a lot. She's on a 9-day week, a 17-hour day. But Terri Perez is the you call yourself a deputy district attorney, I believe, and here in your bio it says for 27 years. So you started when you got your driver's license, obviously, and so you've been at it for most of your adult career. And as a prosecutor, I'm just going to read this, and I'm going to add a couple of my snide remarks so we can always have a good laugh later when we look at this. As a prosecutor, she's handled a variety of cases, including murders, assaults, robberies, drug crimes, among others. She currently serves as chief of the South Bay branch of San Diego, California. Prior to this assignment, she was the chief of narcotics for 3 years, where she saw the number of fentanyl deaths skyrocket. As a mother of 3 grown children and a prosecutor, she felt compelled to take action in an attempt to save lives. This was the motivation behind the upcoming Juvenile Opioid Summit called San Diego Needs to Know. And I'm going to have her spend most of her time today talking about that big event. But let me just tell you something that I've noticed about you, Terri. You know, I was sat in a lot of different rooms where you were making presentations, and you represent the criminal justice side of our community. I work what I call the recovery side. By the way, today is my anniversary, my 37th year of continuous sobriety. And I went to my home group today and I took a virtual cake. And I've had this craving for Krispy Kreme donuts for about 9 months. So I asked everybody on Zoom, who thinks I should go get some Krispy Kreme donuts? And all but 2 people's hands went up. And so I decided after the meeting, I went and got some Krispy Kreme donuts, and I got a dozen because it's much cheaper that way. And I got a senior discount, which is half off, which is very exciting, I think. And I had 3 of them. My stomach's been hurting me all day. So there's a sign of the time. So back to Terri. So Terri is somebody who I've watched sit on panels, make presentations, talk to the community in a way that is really different, I think, from a criminal justice perspective. And you've all seen Summer Stephan, her boss, who was here with us a few months ago, talk about, you know, what happens in the criminal justice system and how it works, basically. But Terry's just somebody who, fortunately or unfortunately, comes to her job with a heart and is impacted by what takes place. And when we have our conversations privately about situations going on, you can hear that in her heart. And I know she spends a numerous amount of hours trying to find ways to bring resources and help families, because they call her office directly and she responds and she makes the appropriate referrals whenever she possibly can. So it's an honor to have you here today, Terri. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you're one of the heroes in our community and maybe in our country. And we appreciate you really being here. And we look forward to hearing about not only what's in your heart, but the big event that's coming up. So let's start off with the big event. Tell us about the big event, the San Diego Needs to Know.
First, congratulations on 37 years. That's impressive. I'm very proud of you. Okay, San Diego Needs to Know. It came about because I was working as the Chief of Narcotics, and I received several calls from parents that had lost their children to opioid deaths. And this was new to me. It was something that I had never experienced as a prosecutor before. I've talked to parents that have lost kids to crimes of violence and other family members, but this just seemed so unique and something that we could try to prevent. And it was a lot of the young people and older people that were consuming counterfeit pills that they believed to be Percocet or Oxy, and they were actually pills containing fentanyl. And I also happened around that same time to meet one of our friends, one of your friends, Bob Elliott, and he wanted to show me a film. And it was Chris Herron's film, The First Day. And when I first saw that, I thought, oh my gosh, this needs to be spread out to our community. We need to reach our own kids in our community. And how can we do that? So not being an event planner, it's been an uphill battle the whole time, an extreme challenge for me, as you know, because I pull my hair out, I'm going to look like Michael soon. Weekly, just trying to deal with the hurdles and the obstacles, trying to get the funding, trying to get a venue. And initially this was pre-COVID, and we were going to do it at the sports arena, and I was going to try to get as many kids in there as I could, because I thought a live event would just be so much more impactful. But then COVID came, we had to switch the whole plan, and we decided to do it virtual. So it's our first time countywide virtual opioid event, and I'm hoping it's not going to be the last one, but we're trying to reach all the kids in both middle school and high school and make them aware of the dangers that are out there, the fentanyl that's in what they believe to be cocaine or pills or just anything on the street. They don't know what they're getting, and to spread that message.
You know, it's interesting. I was watching CNN last night, and they interviewed a publisher. Cannot remember what town he's in. I want to say down south, maybe Georgia. And his newspaper is struggling. And there's been a lot of issues. And I don't know who the on-air personality was. They said, you must be having a lot of issues like the rest of the country with fentanyl. And he interestingly remarked, he says, actually, no, our big problem right now is methamphetamine. And I know, you know, as somebody who's worked in narcotics, you know, here in San Diego, we've seen a huge amount of it. And now we're seeing fentanyl in methamphetamine as well. So we're not going to talk a lot about what we kind of do each week about the things that are going on. But statistically, you know, I want to share that, you know, in our community, our overdoses are up over 600% as of last year. And I also know that the overdose rate continues to grow. The counterfeit medication seems to be getting, it's almost like every corner, like 7-Eleven is, and it's continuing to get worse, especially with young people. So the fact that this event, and I think the planning stages now is going into what, almost 2+ years of putting this together. And most event planners, by the way, do an event like this about 20 to 25 hours a week for whatever time it takes for prep. And I know you have probably a 70-hour-a-week job plus this. So I really admire the time you've taken. And as you've seen, working with volunteers is kind of like herding cats in the dark with broken glass on the floor. You have to walk softly and you have to ask a lot, and it's really difficult. And I'm really looking forward to the event. And I know you've pulled out a lot of rabbits out of your hat to make it happen. So what does the name mean? San Diego Needs to Know. And I know it took a while to get the name. So what does it mean to you? And what is the messaging that you want to send out to our viewers and listeners of this podcast?
Well, as you know, I do have a marvelous team that I'm working with. I've got a lot of great people volunteering, including yourself and Bob. Sherry Rubin is one of our partners as well. And she has a son, Aaron, who overdosed on Oxycontin years ago and is quadriplegic. And she told me a story about being on the beach, and she had wheeled him on the beach in his wheelchair, and some kids came up and they said, "What happened to your son? Why is he in the wheelchair?" And she explained what happened to him. And he said, "You need to tell people. People need to know that." And she said that a lot of people think that if you overdose, you might die, you might get high. But nobody really thinks about the consequence of ending up as a quadriplegic. He lost oxygen to his brain, and it changed his life. It changed his whole family's life. I mean, his mom and dad have made huge sacrifices, which I'm sure they don't regret one moment, just to have their son alive. But it really impacts a lot of people. And I thought we need to share that. We need to share the dangers that are hiding in the pills and the drugs that are out there right now. In the past, kids would maybe experiment with things and they weren't dying like they are now. We have so many people that think they're getting one type of drug and it's something else. I've talked to their parents, I've talked to their siblings. I've tried to get people into grief counseling. It's really not a traditional prosecutor's role. And I couldn't do it without the support of all the volunteers that are helping me, that are connecting people, grief counselors, families and trauma, just people like Sherry. And Sherry's going to be part of this event too. She's going to have her son at the event and tell their story. So I think it's just letting people know what's out there and how this can change your life and how to prevent this. These are preventable deaths. And I think that's what we need to get the word out on.
So the demographic of the child, I'm going to call child, young people that you were trying to get to, what do the studies show from a purposeful, tactical perspective? Why this age group? I think you said middle school, junior high school, of course, high school, and each one of those children, in my experience, they have a sibling, generally younger, some older. So I think getting in the middle is going to be really, really helpful. But why this target market rather than just say just high school? How come you wanted to go to the full spectrum?
Well, I think you've seen as well as I have that kids are starting to try things younger and younger. I have 3 grown children, and I remember them telling me about kids bringing substances to school. And you just don't know what they're going to encounter. You don't know what they're going to get at somebody else's house. We prosecuted a woman that was using her child to sell drugs and provided drugs to another child in her home. The child wasn't feeling well. And she said, "Here, take this." It was Suboxone. Kids need to know that they can't take pills. They can't trust pills. And I think people tend to trust pills because you get them from a doctor, they're prescribed, so they think that they're safe. And when you get them on the streets and they're coming from Mexico or another country, you don't know what you're getting. And the kids need to be aware of that, whether it's pills or powders or whatever way they want to ingest these drugs. You can't guarantee what's in them. You don't know what you're getting.
And just recently, as you know, and I don't know the exact age of the children, but there was 3 children, and all 3 of them got a hold of or got exposed to maybe consuming it because it was in a family's home, and 3 of the children overdosed, and 1 of them actually died. And that was, I think, the oldest was 5, and maybe 3 and 1. I'm not sure the exact ages, but it was, it's funny. It hit the media for about an hour. And it got through social media and it was gone in a day. And it was just scary to think about the fact that a family would have fentanyl, something poisonous, that close to a child. You wouldn't put rat poison, you wouldn't even put, your laundry detergent close to children. So how they even got to it. I haven't heard, you may know, we don't have to go into it, but what's important is as you said, is to be aware of what's going on, not only in your own personal home, but what your kids are talking about when they come home from school, because kids are now back in school and they're talking to each other again. And there's been a lot of interesting knowledge exchanged on the internet the last couple of years because kids had the time to do that, not even including the dark web. So is this going to be a one-time event? Because I know you've put a lot of effort into it, and we should have a weekly series if we could, and I'd love to find a way to help you do that. So is this planned to be a one event? What is your thought? What's your theory? What's your hope?
Initially, I started planning it just to begin giving the message, but I'm hoping that it becomes an annual event, or maybe every 2 years, because I think we do have to reach out. And as you mentioned, with the little kids, the parents need to know, the siblings need to know. We've seen an increase in toddler overdoses during the pandemic. People are consuming drugs, alcohol, and leaving things around. So these kids are getting their hands on them. So, but I do hope it's not a one and done. And that's what our group keeps talking about. This can't be a one and done. We're trying to put educational materials and other resources for kids that are struggling either with addiction, stress, anxiety, all of the things that kids are suffering from these days. We're trying to put all of that on our landing page and send that out to the schools as well.
Now, do you hope to be the chairperson of this event on an ongoing basis? Before you answer, know that what my experience in the nonprofit and volunteer world is, if you do a really good job, they're going to want you to come back again. And the hardest part of being the person in charge is your job is going to be to hand it off to somebody. And I want to voluntarily tell you right now, I'm not going to do it. So that being said, if you could carve out, in somehow in your career, now that you've done all this work, would you want to do it again? Or would you want to bring in a co-chair potentially and turn some of it over to them to handle some of the heavy lifting?
I would be happy to do it again. You might not see the sucker on my forehead. There is a stamp that says that. And it's something that's so important.
We don't see the handcuffs to your chair either, so we know you're being restrained to get these answers out. And a lot of people are going to see this, so know it's being recorded. We're going to share it with everyone. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. That's
okay. I'd be happy to do it again. This is something that is so important to me. Just if I could do anything just to save lives and get the message out there, I will do it, whatever it takes. And it's time, it's aggravation, but it's more important than so many other things that that we all spend our time on. So, and I would love to have a co-chair. So if you're willing to volunteer,
I think I put my disclaimer out there already. We'd have to find some other ways to work something out. We'll talk offline. So tell us the messaging that you have is really important, and I think it means something to you personally. Can you share a little bit about that, about how this touches you? Because I think when I opened my remarks about you, that I said you bring your heart to your career, and there are a lot of people, don't take this wrong, but there's a lot of people in the criminal justice system who are just so busy they never look up. They're just, the judges are looking at their files, the prosecutors are having to take 100 more cases that week. The defense people are public defenders, they have heavy caseloads, and it just seems like I think we're starting to slow down putting people away for drugs and substance use disorders now, which is great. But I think we've had some changes in the law, and people aren't going away that should be going away. And we're also seeing the criminal justice system prosecute. And you guys have done a great job in your office, going after somebody who gets somebody a drug that kills them. The difficulty with my thinking with that, to be honest, is they bought it from somebody else who bought it from somebody else. And hopefully, and I'm sure you're getting names so you can go down the line, and hopefully we can slow this down one day, because it seems like we're in a tsunami and it's only going in one direction. Tsunamis go in and they go back out. Right now, we just see this drug overdose campaign that the producers and manufacturers, distributors are on. They just see it every time it hits the news, their business spikes, which is a very interesting thing. So the question is, the messaging again to you personally, what do we need to know from Terri's heart that we really need to pass on to others?
Well, you talk about the changes in the criminal justice system, and there have been a lot of changes, and our office is doing a really good job at trying to recognize people that are struggling with addiction and mental health issues and get them the treatment they need. And there's a big distinction between those people and those people that are just trying to make a profit. And those that are trying to make a profit and selling these fentanyl pills, knowing that people are dying, and selling it to people and having them die and continuing to sell it after that when they've already had one death, those are the people that we're trying to hold accountable. But just on a personal level, talking to the parents that have lost these children, that have struggled for a long time, really struck a chord in my heart. I have a son that's in recovery, and when I would hear them tell their stories, I could very much relate to the struggles that they've had and the fears that they've had when you get that call wondering, is your kid okay? And I'm extremely passionate about it from that standpoint, and just wanting to not have other parents go through that. And I will always have my phone under my pillow because I'm afraid of anybody calling me in the middle of the night. It just, I'm sure I have PTSD going through that. But I think if we can save one child's life or one adult's life, then we have to do everything we can to try to do that. And that goes hand in hand with holding people accountable that don't care that people are dying, that are continuing to sell these pills. So from a prosecutor standpoint, I am very concerned about doing the right thing in the justice system. And as a parent, this is something that is very personal to me.
Yeah. So there'll be a lot of parents that will hear this, and hopefully the parents that hear this will share it with others. But what do you want to tell parents based on your experience, based on, all the data that you reviewed and because you hear it at the highest level from, all the different, drug enforcement agencies, criminal justice. I mean, I've learned the last couple of years, my main source of information now tends to be coming from the medical examiner who has actual data, because they do autopsies and they can tell us what's in someone's body, and it becomes public record. So that's a strange place to have a source of information, but it's accurate, so we can use it as at least a pivot point and a target to as a platform to move off of. But what would you tell parents? Because you hear all levels, you see it in court, you've watched it from a enforcement perspective, from a prosecution perspective, and you've also gotten the phone calls from the families who have lost loved ones. So take a second and just share with families out there what it is you think they should know as a way to kind of keep their eyes and ears open and be a resource for getting access to support, rather than having to kind of watch their child just slowly disintegrate.
Well, I think that I've talked to a lot of really good parents that have tried to do everything they can to save their child. And I'm not an expert on parenting advice. I really am not, and I would never judge another parent or their choices. I think if parents can listen to their children, hear if they're suffering or struggling, there's such a huge nexus between mental health issues and drug use. And that's something that, if the parents can maintain a good relationship, open communication, beware of signs and symptoms of where it looks like the child is struggling more, isolating. If you see drug paraphernalia laying around, familiarize yourself with that type of thing. What are you looking for? Are you looking for burnt foils? Are you looking for tutors? Are you looking for, just odd things that you would find? I'm not telling you to go conduct fourth waiver searches in their rooms, but be aware what they have, in their rooms. I went through my kids' stuff, but I still missed things. So like I said, I'm not an expert in this, but I think to the extent that we can talk to our kids and hear them and try to, assist them when they're struggling, connect them to resources, know who their friends are. Don't let your kids sleep out. I mean, kids notoriously do bad things when they're sleeping out of the home. Looking at what my kids did, I know that when they were sneaking out, you couldn't watch them. You don't know what other parents are doing. Talk to other parents, call the other parents before your kids spend the night there. Don't be that parent that just says, well, I'm not going to be that annoying parent that's going to call. I drove my kids crazy throughout their high school, years, and you just have to be on top of it. But, I can't presume to be an expert on this topic. Just educate yourselves and know what's out there.
Yeah. I was a drive-by parent. And what I mean by that is when my kids, were going to parties, sometimes I just drive by. I mean, I wouldn't walk in and introduce myself, say, hey, I'm Jessica's dad. But I would drive by and see a car that was familiar and maybe just sit for a couple of minutes. But that's just kind of my background, because my history. I think a little differently than some. And as somebody in recovery, I didn't want to see my kids get into trouble. And the thing that's different, and my kids are in their 30s respectively, the medication or the counterfeit medication that kids are getting today, and I don't want parents to take away from this that, you have to look for these signs, and without these signs, there's nothing to worry about, because young kids, children, high school, college, they're going to parties. And we call them Skittle parties, or they call them Skittle parties, where they come to a party, they put the medication in a bowl. And at a certain time during the night, a bell goes off, metaphorically, I'm saying that, or someone says, okay, it's time. Everybody goes to that bowl and they grab something. And a lot of kids are getting access to counterfeit medication. They have no idea what it is. It's poison. They take it, they overdose, and they die. So it isn't necessarily somebody who may even have an addiction, or someone who is a substance use, abuser, or a drug seeker, or someone who's looking to party beyond drinking a beer, or maybe having a vodka martini. But if kids are aware that you don't put something in your mouth that you don't know where it came from, and we don't have to tell them about that. I mean, I get my little things, Trader Joe's are recalling potato chips, for example. Oh my God, we go through the cupboards and we check. Just educate your children. And with the holidays coming up now, this is the time when families get together. This is when families sit down together. Kids are going to be coming back from school for the first time in a while. They've been gone. And, what would you tell a parent, because I have a thing about listening. So what would you tell a parent when you get together as a family, might be a time to check in? What would you coach them on, Terri?
I think the hardest thing is that kids think they're invincible. And if you tell them, oh, this pill could kill you, you're going to die if you use this drug, that messaging has not proven to work. I think that parents have to just share the information with them, understand that kids are going to listen to maybe 10% of it. And if you can let them know that, talk to them about other kids that have gone through some struggles. I mean, one of the parents that I talk to all the time lost her 17-year-old daughter, who was a straight A student cheerleader that was hoping to go to the Naval Academy. And on paper, that kid was doing everything right. But she was mixed up with other kids that were also good students in college. And the mom monitored her comings and goings, and knew everything, could see where she was at any given time. But kids are sneaky. They can get around parents. They will they try to make their own choices, and they think they know it all. And until they get older and get some wisdom, we just have to try to get them through these ages where they are so vulnerable to the influence of other kids. And I think maybe if we could share that with parents, is that they're going to listen to their friends more than they're going to listen to you. So be aware of who your kids are spending time with, and try to give them the right messaging, and let them know that there are things that are just so dangerous and deadly. Kids are going to try things, they're going to make mistakes, and it's okay if they make mistakes. You want them to recover and learn, especially before we send them out on their own. But these mistakes these days with these counterfeit pills are fatal. And if they can share that with their kids, I can't prevent you from doing everything. I can't demand that you make the right choice all the time, but let me just share with you this one, thing to be aware of, that these drugs can kill you.
And you can't handcuff them, and you can't lock them in their room, because they'll pop out the window, or someone will potentially come by and pass it. I mean, kids are going to do what they're going to do. I want to take the other side of that kids think they're invincible. Parents, okay, also believe that that's never going to happen to my child. My kid would never do that. My kid does not do that. Johnny's friends may do that, but my child has never done that. They've never demonstrated that behavior. They've never come home with unusual friends. Well, my attitude is, what? They might just be hiding it better than everyone else is. So as a parent, don't make any assumptions, and not because you're suspicious, but because the wisdom you need today to be an effective parent, dealing with some of the resources that are out there that the kids are unfortunately taking advantage of, because they think it's going to help them study better, help them sleep better, have more fun at parties, enjoy their relationships differently, enhancement opportunities, people that are self-medicating because someone says, if you take this, you'll feel better, or you'll be better in sports, or you'll be better looking, or you'll be taller, or you'll achieve more in school, or it'll help enhance your personality. And maybe your dad or mom won't be asking you questions when you walk in the house. And we haven't even talked about marijuana today. And I don't really even want to go into it other than say 90% plus THC content. It ain't your parents' marijuana. So just as parents, do what you can to be part of the journey of your children, so they don't accidentally put poison in their body. And the message is that simple. It's not a matter of just say no, because you tell a kid no, in my experience, they're going to go, hey, thanks for that advice. And they're going to go the opposite way, because no is a trigger word. And we talk a lot about that in interventions, about avoiding those trigger words. So Terri, what else would you like to leave us with today before we go to Mike's question? He always gets to ask the best one. I don't know how he does it, but what else would you like to share with our audience?
I think that maintaining relationships with your kids and trying to listen more than talk is probably the most important skill. I don't follow that advice. Just as a side note, I probably talk more than I listen. And they remind me of that. Now they're young adults, and connecting with them, making sure they have connections is, I think the most important thing you can do as a parent. I had a son that was struggling and isolating. Therapy and psychiatry, all of them told me if you can connect with them, they may open up more and they may share things, but you can't predict what'll happen. You just have to do your best. We're all just trying to do our best, and sharing the message of the dangers of the new drugs that we're seeing. They're not going to go away. It's going to get worse. I mean, the numbers rose from 33 deaths in 2016 to probably over 700 by the end of this year. So it really has just blown up. We're seeing more and more young people impacted.
And that number is just relevant to our community, correct?
Yes, that's true. That's San Diego County.
Right. And, we're the 8th largest city in the country, but, there are some cities that are 10 times smaller than we are that have a much, much higher per capita overdose deaths because they're targeted by distributors, because the law enforcement is not as prevalent, if you will. So with that, I want to turn it over to Michael. And Michael, what's on your mind today? Because you look like you're deep in thought.
Well, I was just wanting to know a little bit more about the event coming up in December. Now, that's going to happen throughout the whole school district at one time, or is it focused on at one place that the kids would come to see the video and things like that? I mean, what will this event look like?
Well, it's going to take place at the School of Creative and Performing Arts in San Diego, and we're live streaming it to any participating school. The Office of Education is one of my partners, and they've been magnificent through the whole process. And they are reaching out to the principals and superintendents to invite all of the schools. What makes it difficult is, especially now, just coming out of the pandemic, teachers are very protective of their teaching time. And what I'm hoping is this event starts at 9:30 and ends at 10:45, whatever period they're in. I'm hoping the teachers will hold them there until the event is over. It's a combination of live speakers and some videos. We have Sherry Rubin and her son Aaron in person. Chris Herron, our keynote speaker, who former Boston Celtics basketball player who produced the film The First Day and other short films. He will be there. And then we have a play that's being produced by the school. They've written it and they'll produce it, and they'll perform the play live. And then we also have some inspirational messages from Joe Musgrove from the San Diego Padres, Troy Polamalu, who lives here in San Diego County. He pre-recorded an inspirational message. And then we have a short message from kids that are now sober that talked about how they struggled with addiction and they found hope through sobriety. And I think it's a really positive and upbeat message that we hope to end with.
Do you have a website?
It's called SDNeeds2Know, and I can share that link with you, with Scott. I think Scott also has it. I don't have the whole thing memorized, but
yeah, I've got it. I'll put it in my show notes. I just want you to say it on air. So, okay, well, why don't you go ahead and give us your quote and see us out of the show.
My quote is, we need to treat ourselves with a little more kindness and cut ourselves some slack.